Before I let you watch the rest of the video, I want you to observe the feeling that you have right now. This is a dopamine rush. I want you to think back to the first time you've ever seen a satisfying video. Do you have this same feeling, this feeling of anticipation of what's gonna happen next? Well, that's dopamine, and those videos are built to get you hooked on them. So today I'm going to teach you about dopamine and how you can use it to do hard tasks and do things that you don't want to do. Dopamine is one of the most important neurotransmitters in our brain. It's basically our reward system, so it tells us how much we like to do things, what we like to do, and what we find pleasure in. Basically, it can also provide motivation for you to do a task that you might not want to do. So if you can get control of your dopamine levels in your brain, then you can get control of your life. And then you can also manipulate your dopamine feeling to do hard tasks and feel great while you're doing them. Now, there are some massive sources of dopamine in our day-to-day lives. It gets us addicted onto things that we would not necessarily be addicted to. Now, for example, some of these big companies actually hire behavioralists. I don't think I pronounced that right. They hire these people to try to manipulate the dopamine levels in their users so they get that same feeling as gambling whenever they post a post on Facebook. So that's what gets people addicted to these platforms and makes us scroll for hours and hours and hours on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is. All these companies strategically send you notifications, put things in front of you to get you to stay on there longer so they can make more money. Now, social media isn't the only platform that triggers your dopamine. There is also different types of foods that make you have more dopamine and, that give that satisfaction or that scratches an itch, if you will. So, for example, like sugary foods. Like, let's say, you indulge in some candy because candy is pretty damn good. That is a source of dopamine. So you're getting that feeling of, wow, this is amazing, I love this. So then you're gonna want more of it. Now, a lot of people have the willpower to say, listen, I'm only gonna have one little piece of a chocolate bar, and that's great. But some people just will devour the whole chocolate bar and not think twice about it. Now, there's something called a base level of dopamine, which is the base level of dopamine that is in our brains currently. Dopamine kind of fluctuates throughout the day, but some of these different foods can actually increase your dopamine 135% to 145% your base level. So for example, cookies can actually drastically increase your dopamine levels and would make you have those cravings for cookies. Like, for example, whenever you smell cookies baking in the oven, aren't you just salivating at the mouth because you just want to try one of those cookies? Well, this is your dopamine. Your dopamine is telling you, you want the cookies, you want to eat the cookies. When you might not necessarily want to eat the cookies, but it's just that smell that's triggering in your brain the delicious taste of that fresh cookie. Like right now, I'm just salivating at the mouth for a chocolate chip cookie right now. If you think cookies are bad, chips can also trigger this as well. Fats can actually increase your dopamine 160% above your baseline. So this is what makes you crave, those Doritos or any different type of source of fat. Maybe it's meat too. Like, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of fat, but some are healthier than others. Now, dopamine isn't all bad. I'm making it sound terrible, but it's not actually that bad. You can actually use dopamine to do things that you don't want to do. You're probably like, well, what the hell? Why the hell would I do something if I don't want to do it? Well, sometimes we have to do things that we don't want to do, like, for example, homework or writing a project out, or I don't know, working on a business plan. It's not that exciting if you don't like it. So you can tell yourself, listen, I am going to be on my phone after I finish this project, homework, you fill in the blank, and limit yourself to it though. So it's like, I will finish this, and then after I can scroll on Instagram for 5 minutes. And then you can say, all right, well, I'm gonna finish this, and then maybe I'll have a slice of chocolate or just something small, some sort of something that gives you that dopamine rush that then associates doing that hard work with something good and a reward of some type. So let's say that you are actually addicted, chronically addicted to your phone. Like you just can't get off of it for the life of you, which happens to basically all of us, because I am guilty of it. Many times a week, I'll sit on my phone for about 30, 40, 50 minutes and I'm like, what? I did nothing. I got nothing accomplished. What I like to do is I like to actually put my phone in a completely separate room whenever I'm working, so I don't get those notifications that are provoking me to go on my phone. It's kind of distracting and I just can't have that right now. So I'll put it in a closet or I'll put it in another room and then I'll deal with it after I'm done my work. Now let's say that that's too much and you just crave your phone. Like you just cannot be in the same house as your phone. You know what I mean? Or the same vicinity as your phone. Well, my friend, you need to do what's called a dopamine detox. This is basically getting rid of everything that you like to do and just basically confining yourself to really, really basic, daunting tasks that you might not want to do. So limit your screen time, maybe read a book instead of going on your phone. It's really difficult, but I suggest doing it for a week. I kind of do them on and off here and there. Like if I find myself being on Instagram for 3 hours every freaking day, I'm like, you know what? I need to put my phone away. I need to cut off all sources of dopamine and just help build up my confidence again, so I'm not going to reach for my phone to fulfill that emptiness. I mean, you know what? And it's completely okay if that's what you feel. If you feel a sense of loneliness where you need to be on your phone, that's okay. But putting down your phone for one whole week and focusing on yourself is probably the best thing that you can do to help control your dopamine. You'll feel more in control of yourself when you put your phone away and you're not tempted to pick it up again. So you'll find that you're more productive. Now, in my next video, I'm going to do a step-by-step of me actually doing a dopamine detox. So if you would like to join the dopamine detox, if you're feeling risky enough to do it, then comment down below and I want to get your opinion on what you're going to be cutting out. Without further ado, here is my friend Oli. He's a medical student that is specializing in neuroscience and he's here to talk to us about dopamine.
Thank you, Oli, for joining the Zoom call. So, why don't you go ahead and give the viewers a little intro to, what you're doing and who you are and all that.
Hi. Yep, like Parker said, my name is Oli. Yeah, so far, I've completed various amount of subjects, and I'm just becoming versed in the aspect of neuroscience. And this is my second year, so yeah, today I'll be here talking to you about dopamine,
Yeah.
and give it
Well,
back to you.
yeah, that's great that you're in neuroscience because today we're going to talk about dopamine and basically the effects of dopamine on people's motivation to do things. All right. So I guess let's just jump right into it. What is dopamine?
So dopamine, it's a neurotransmitter. It's synthesized in one of the low brain structures called the midbrain. There are about two parts in the midbrain that make dopamine. One is the substantia nigra pars compacta, and another is the ventral tegmental area of the midbrain. And yeah, dopamine has many different effects on the human body. It's involved in movement. It's involved in your motivation and reward center of the brain. And yeah, that's like the basic understanding of it as of now.
Right. So how often would you say that dopamine plays a role in our lives?
That's a very good question. I would say it plays a role all the time, constantly. It's always working. There's never a time in your living experience that dopamine is not exerting some sort of
Wow.
effect on the human body.
Yeah, so it basically controls like all your like motivation and like your will to do something or like the
Yeah, it's
gratification that you get from that, like the reward that you get from fulfilling like a difficult task, let's say, or just fulfilling a need of some sort, like scratching an itch, if you will.
That so yes, kind of in a way. So what it does, right? There is specific to like the reward and motivation aspect, right? There are
Hmm.
two hypotheses that people think dopamine plays a role. So the
Hmm.
first part is that pleasurable experiences are invariably associated with elevated amounts of dopamine in the brain. For instance, like when you have your favorite food, when you have experiences such as sex, playing video games, those are associated with elevated amounts of dopamine. The second part to this hypothesis is that dopamine is the cause of the pleasurable experiences in the brain. There's a caveat to that. So dopamine, it increases without any sources of pleasure. The main example would be like, let's say you finished performing a really hard task. Like you just finished writing an entire thesis on the so-and-so subject. Right when you're finished that task, you will have an elevated amount of dopamine. Would that thesis writing be considered pleasure? Some would say no. Others may say yes. But yes, dopamine would increase with or without pleasure in the brain. Also, it leads to increased desires for stimuluses that increase dopamine. For instance, let's say you finish writing that book or thesis, and now you had that increase in dopamine. That dopamine increase will then increase your motivation to further do more things to then again increase dopamine in your brain.
Wow, that's really cool. Do you feel that dopamine is being abused nowadays from different sources like Instagram and all this kind of stuff?
That's a good question. Yeah. Nowadays, right, it's very easy to just get instant gratification, have there are many sources of pleasure, like you said, pornography. That's a really big one among the youth. Nowadays we have our phones next to us. We can just pick it up, scroll. We feel like we're gaining so much information because there's so much being thrown at us. And what happens is like when you do get that instant gratification, there is an increase in dopamine. But over time, that pleasurable experience you're receiving will not seem as pleasurable as it could have been if you didn't continuously have it all the time.
So, what are some positives to dopamine?
Some positives to dopamine. So the main positive I can see it as is like you could leverage the dopamine in your brain in order to maximize growth within your life. Nowadays, you've probably heard of like this so-called dopamine detox.
Right.
In times like that, what you're doing is you're basically increasing the pain, which could be associated with like less pleasure in your life. So you're not having as many pleasurable experiences. So then when you do then have a pleasurable experience, you will feel more pleasure from it instead of it feeling less pleasurable,
Right.
So that could definitely be a plus. Yeah, you can use it as a motivator in a way. You could use it to like increase your motivation to do other tasks.
Yeah.
So like it's definitely a balance with pain and pleasure. As anyone knows, like let's say you go to the gym often, there's that you're physically in pain doing the gym work, but once you're out of the gym, you feel some sort of satisfaction and gratitude and some pleasure, and that's because after you do something really hard, you will have that dopamine increase, which then motivates you again to go back to the gym and repeat that cycle. And this can be applied to many areas of your life. It could be with studying. It could be with another notable one is cold water dips.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really big one. You put your body in the cold water, you obviously you're gonna have a cortisol increase because you're stressed in that instance. But once you get out, you're gonna feel some euphoria and you have a big dopamine spike. In a research study actually done in the University of Prague, it concluded that after that painful stimulus of an ice water bath, there was a 250% increase in dopamine.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's almost equal to levels. I think it's actually greater than the levels you can experience when you consume cocaine. So
wow.
Yeah.
So cold showers are better than cocaine.
100%, 100% better than cocaine. Yes.
Wow. So do drugs play on that receptor? Do they play on the dopamine receptor that makes you feel pleasure from the drug, which then triggers an addiction, would you say? Or how would the core of a drug addiction begin? Would it be through dopamine?
100%, yes. So like many drugs, you probably know a couple like cocaine, for instance. That is a dopamine reuptake inhibitor. So it will leave dopamine within the synaptic cleft, so it continuously stimulate the dopamine receptors, which will then increase the pleasure that you experience from it. other ones like methamphetamines and amphetamines, like the ones like Adderall,
Okay.
Ritalin is another name for it. Those will also increase the amount of dopamine in the synaptic cleft, which will then increase pleasure. And obviously, the greater the dopamine, your body will then crave more of it.
More of it.
So you will.
Wow.
So yeah, there goes that seeking, that like it's like a motivation to get more, which will then could make you obviously addicted in the long term.
And then that's basically what triggers the addiction. Basically,
Yes, the addiction
the
cycle.
craving for more. Yeah.
Of course.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, what would be some negatives to dopamine?
Some negatives to dopamine. Well, first, like we just mentioned, addiction. That can it can make you fall into like a cycle of like a repetitive cycle of either drugs. It could be even gambling. A lot of gambling institutions, they play on that dopamine release. You know, maybe you have one win at the casino, and all of a sudden now you're back in the casino. Why? Because you think you're going to win again. It's just it's just a repetitive cycle. For instance, even like pornography, right? Like we were talking about, the more you consume it, the less sensitive your body is to dopamine, so the less pleasure you will feel. So this is why it's good to modulate how much dopamine you are experiencing, and how many pleasurable experiences you have in your life. So then your body is more, what's the word, sensitive to any dopamine spikes you feel. So you can actually feel pleasure again.
What are some things during the day that would make our dopamine spike up and down?
Main things, like going on our phones. That's like instant gratification. You're gonna have a dopamine spike. Playing a video game, seeing advertising on your phone, dopamine spike.
Wow.
And what else really does that? Like, oh, another one, chocolate. Chocolate's actually known to increase dopamine.
Oh wow, really?
So like, yeah, your favorite Oreo cookie might cause a dopamine spike as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, those are the main things. Anything that will give you some sort of pleasure throughout the day will increase your dopamine. That's why it's very good to regulate how much you do and consume. So then things can actually bring you happiness.
Right.
If it's not necessarily like that chocolate, or if it's not necessarily your favorite video game you're playing, you know, just any regular thing can give you happiness if you just didn't consume that much or didn't experience that many dopamine spikes during the day. Exactly.
Well, thank you for your time. It's been very valuable, and
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next one.